Hello YouTube, this is Mr. Ephesians. I'm back again with yet another video. I believe this is my fourth video, and I told you in my last video that I was going to do a video about my testimony because I wanted to change this channel to make it a little bit more powerful than just having a channel about visions and dreams. Like I mentioned in my last video, I want this channel to be more of a ministry for those to be brought into the power and the glory of Christ. And basically, I'm going to go ahead, like I said, I'm going to tell you my testimony, and let you know how I was brought into the light, into the truth, into the power and the glory of God. Well, first, I would like to say that my upbringing was a little bit different from traditional Christian convert. Usually there's one person in the family or both parents are Christians and they preach the gospel to the child. The child rebels and then they're within time they're brought into life. My situation was a little bit different. See, my mother was a backslidden Christian and my father was also a backslidden Christian, and I didn't really have a Christian upbringing. The gospel wasn't really preached to me. I heard gospel songs on occasion on some Sundays, but nothing was really seriously instilled in my heart. So from a very young age, my path was towards darkness. I was born in 1982, and I would say from the time of 5 years old to a little bit beyond my younger years, I really got into darkness and evil. And the way I got into being drawn to darkness was through my surroundings. I was surrounded by sin. My mother was sinning. You know, um, I love my mother very much, but I'm just trying to be real. My mother was sinning. My father was sinning. My father smoked. Um, you know, my mother drank on occasion, and she smoked too. And that was my surrounding. There was no Christian morals really there. And my mother and father, they weren't really bad people or anything like that, but there was no God in my life. So my upbringing or my mentality was based on what I saw. And another big, big, big part of why I was drawn to evil was what my eyes saw on TV. You know, my father was really into horror films, and my mother was also into horror films. So I was always watching horror films from the time of 5 years old. I was drawn to horror films. I was just intrigued by horror films, fascinated by horror films. I'm talking, Chucky, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, all the good 80s horror films or the popular 80s horror films that were released back in the 80s, I most likely saw because my father took me to every single one of them once they were released. And, and I just sat there and I watched it and I just enjoyed it. I loved it, because for me as a 5-year-old, that was my reality. That's what I associated with being real, you know. I believed in little demonic dolls walking around. I believed in witches. I believed in there's people out there like Freddy Krueger, and for some reason or another, I was fascinated with it. I liked it. I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. I was always wanting to see horror films. And I noticed that, you know, throughout time, after me watching the horror films and me being intrigued with the horror films, I started to develop an anger deep down inside of me. Not just because of the horror films, but because of what was going on in my life. Um, my mother and father, they were not together. They did both raise me, but they weren't together. My mother, at the age of 5 years old, ended up marrying, at the time, was my stepfather. My stepfather was a Freemason, you know, and my stepfather being a Freemason brought a lot of demonic things inside the household, that at the time I didn't really associate with being demonic or even my mother being associated with being demonic, but all those rituals and traditions that are associated with Freemasonry was brought inside the household. All those demons were brought inside the household, and I really didn't have a close relationship with my mother, you know, because of my stepfather. My stepfather was a very jealous individual, and you know, now I know it's because of all the demons that were attached to him at that particular time. So, I grew up being very lonesome, wanting for something real. And my realness, like I said, was from the horror movies and the films and everything like that. And, darkness just overcame me, And at one time or another, my mother had a suicidal demon attached to her. And she basically came inside the room one day when I was very young, and she basically indirectly told us that she was going to commit suicide. She said she was going to go somewhere very far for a long time. We weren't going to be seen by her anymore. And that suicidal demon, attached to me. So at a young age, I had suicidal tendencies all the way up until my adult years. I've been struggling with suicidal thoughts and whatnot. So just given by what I've been saying right now, my path was just headed towards hell. Satan had a grasp on me. My chains were locked down in hell, and if I wasn't saved by Jesus, that's where I would have went. Okay, fast forward a little bit. I'm going to go to the age of 7. The reason why I go to the age of 7 is because at the age of 7 is where I really had an encounter with the powers of darkness that came from Satan. At the age of 7, I discovered that I had an ability that whenever I was really angered at someone, I can cause things to happen just by mentally thinking it. Now, I know that seems kind of crazy right now. People say, that was just coincidence or whatnot. No, this is not coincidence. I had the ability for whenever someone did anything bad to me, I would think exactly what I wanted to happen to that person so intensely and so filled with anger that it would happen. And I'm going to give you an example of how this happened. One day, when I was 7 years old, I was, playing with my friends in the neighborhood. I was new to the neighborhood, and so I didn't really know who were the good kids to hang around with and who were the bad kids to hang out with. So, some of the kids decided to take advantage of me. And I had some chalk that I was playing with, and one of the kids asked me, "Can I borrow your chalk? And I'll give it right back to you." So I said, "Okay, you can go ahead and borrow my chalk, whatever toys I have, you can play with too," because I just wanted to make friends. So anyways, he borrowed my chalk, and then he went off. And then when it was time for me to go inside the house, I asked him, I said, "Hey, can I have my chalk back?" And then the kid looked at me and said, "No, this is my chalk. You gave it to me." Just usual how kids act. And I said, "No, that was my chalk. I let you borrow it. You said you're going to give it back to me. Please give me back my chalk." Well, this kid became very arrogant. He said, "No, this is my chalk." And he took off with my chalk. Any normal kid probably would have got angry and upset, cried about it and let it go. But me being very dark and having those demonic forces behind me, I was very angry and enraged. Not just normal anger, but I was enraged at what he just did. And he took off in his scooter. So I told myself, I said, I want that kid to fall down on his face, and I want him to bleed on his face, because I wanted him to skin his face. And I knew exactly how I wanted him to fall and what I wanted to happen to him. And he was going up a ramp to jump a ramp, and sure enough, he fell down. He skinned the side of his face, and he was all bloody. And to this day, I believe he still has that scar on his face. That's how deep it was, and it took a long time to heal. See, but after that happened, I wasn't in shock or anything like that. I just put an evil grin on my face, and I just rolled off. And I knew that deep down inside me, I had some type of power. I had some type of ability to do things, and I used those abilities to hurt people throughout my life. And I'm not really going to go into detail about that right now, because I am ashamed of what I did to other people. You know what? And maybe from another time I'll go ahead and I'll go into detail about the things I did. But you know what? Since that instance, when I was a young child and I noticed I had that ability, I grew, a hunger inside me grew for power. And I wanted to know where this power came from and how I can get more power like this and how I can be a powerful individual. Now, at the same time, as I was having these thoughts and this hunger for power, I heard God speaking to me, God talking to me, God trying to bring me into the light. But I was so confused, and Satan had such a grasp onto me that I couldn't really, obey those commands. I didn't know where that voice was coming from, but now I knew a voice was coming from God, and God would speak to me on occasion, and He would tell me that the powers that I was seeking were not of Him, and that He was more powerful and He was more great. He had more things in store for me, you know. And God would show me visions from the age of 7 years old, vision of things that were going to happen in the future, and these things came to pass. And I'm going to go ahead and give you one example of a vision that God gave to me, and it wasn't a vision. He actually spoke to me and told me what was going to happen. He told me to tell my mother exactly what was going to happen, and it happened. Okay, while I was 7 years old, I got hit by a car and I was put inside the hospital. Okay, at the same very exact time, my mother was giving birth to my sister. Okay, as soon as my sister was born in the same hospital as where I got hit by a car, um, my mother came in and she came to speak to me. Not my mother, I'm sorry, my grandparents came in to speak to me and tell me about the birth of my sister, and they were so happy. And they said, "Jamie, aren't you happy now that your sister is born? This is your first sister." But I heard God speak to me and tell me, that something's wrong with your sister. So I told my grandparents, without saying where the source came, who said it to me, without I told my grandparents, I say, there's something wrong with my sister. And then, my grandparents said, they kind of brushed it off, and said, what are you talking about? Because they never heard me say anything like that before. And I said, there's something wrong with my sister, and if it's not fixed, she's going to die. Because that's what God told me, that my sister was going to eventually pass away if this problem wasn't fixed. Now, there was no prayer over my sister because, not too many people in my family, like I said, were true Christians. And if there were prayer, the prayer was weak and it wasn't answered because they weren't righteous people, So I can't think of any real prayer that went out towards my sister. So I believe to this day that, if there was somebody, one individual who was at least righteous in my family who prayed, those prayers would have got answered and my sister would have been revived. Because otherwise, why would God tell me that my sister was going to die? And so I'm going to go ahead and fast forward a little bit forward past this time, because I'm dealing with both the evil and I'm both dealing with both the goodness. Both of those forces are battling for my soul, and I could feel that they were battling for my soul. So in my teenage years, I grew more into wanting to learn about witchcraft, the occult, the paranormal. I wanted to know about all that, so I watched videos, I watched movies all about witchcraft, the occult, went online, learned rituals. At this time, my mother was a practicing witch too. So I was watching my mom, she was doing Wicca, which she thought was white witchcraft, whatever. It wasn't as dark as, as some other forms of witchcraft. So, I was watching her read tarot cards for her friends, and me, I'm absorbing this, and I want to learn more, and I'm watching my own videos and doing my own research on the internet, and I'm learning spells and incantations and rituals that I really didn't do at that time. I just did it for educational purposes, so I knew the power behind witchcraft, and I wanted to find out what's true or not. And sure enough, it was true, because all the rituals that my mother did, the candlelight, the tarot cards, all those things manifested, and they were real, and they became real to me. See, me, I still had that evil mentality deep down inside of me, so I didn't want to be associated with white witchcraft. I was more into the deep, dark witchcraft. That's what I want to know. That's what I want to learn. But then something happened. My mother, like I told you, she was a backsliding Christian. She turned back to Christianity, and God grasped her heart, and she turned to Christ. So, my mother threw away all the tarot cards, got rid of all the demonic things that she was partaking in, and she got her mind straight onto the cross. And she would drag me and my brother to church every single Sunday, and I hated it because I didn't want anything to do with it. I wanted to go my path. I wanted to, follow